Tonight you are here to see Maggie Doyne. Maggie is an amazing young lady. I first got to meet Maggie quite a few years ago. Maggie babysat for my children. I was lucky enough to live in the same neighborhood as Maggie, and I wish I could say that Maggie was our only babysitter, but Maggie was that sought-after babysitter in Mendham. So she was one of those girls that if you did use her, you would say, if someone said, hey, do you have a good babysitter? You'd be like, not really. So anyway, Maggie was a tough babysitter to get because she was in such high demand. She's magnificent, she's wonderful. Many years ago, she left Mendham, not that many, and traveled around. I'm going to let her tell her story, but Maggie has done amazing, incredible things. Things that you and I, at least I cannot even imagine having done, and she has accomplished them all with ease and grace despite the hard work she has put into it. She's persistent, and she's unbelievable. So I give you Maggie. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you all so much for coming out on a weeknight to see me. It's such an honor to be back speaking in Mendham, my hometown. This is always my favorite place to be in the world. There's nothing like, I actually arrived just Sunday night, really, really late, and there's nothing like coming down Main Street in Mendham off of 24. It's just the best feeling in the entire world. When I see that Black Horse Tavern, I know I'm home, and I love this place, so I really appreciate everybody coming out. And this church has actually also been a really, really amazing community for Kopila and for my children, because for the past, I think, 6 years in a row, they've hosted concerts to benefit Kopila Valley and raised money to send over to my children. So it's been a really, really special connection between this parish and Kopila Valley since the very, very early days that I was just starting out. I don't know how much of my own personal story you may know or not know, and I was thinking about, well, should I go back to the way, way beginning or start from, where I am now? And I thought, well, why don't I just take it from the beginning? And if you know some of this journey already, then I'm sorry to repeat myself. I also want to say hi to Mendham TV, who also got me right when I was 19 and just starting out, and has been a really, really big supporter of spreading the word and the message. So it's great to be back on there again tonight. The first picture that you see is something that happened, I guess, just a couple of years ago, totally out of the blue. I got a call from Nicholas Kristoff on a story that he was doing on a concept called do-it-yourself foreign aid. And, oh yeah, sorry. Hello?
There you are.
Okay. I think I just need to lean down a little bit. So Nick Kristoff was doing this story on a concept that he was saying was do-it-yourself foreign aid, and I didn't know it at the time, but the whole subject of this story was the idea that anyone, anywhere in the world can go out and make a difference and really take it on themselves. And that, from the very beginning, was my approach to making the world better. It was that, if you see something you don't like, then you have to be the one to change it. And I really did not like the way that children in our world were being raised, especially in the orphan community. And I thought, well, I can read about it and I can kind of learn about it, but I really, if I want to make a change, I have to do it myself. So that's really the first picture. I didn't actually know that it was going to be a cover on the New York Times until it came out, or a couple days before it came out. And I started to realize when a photographer showed up at this little rinky-dinky airport 4 hours away from our children's home, and the crew had 15 bags of luggage that they had brought on this teeny tiny airplane that only sat about 12 people. And I just looked at them like, oh my gosh, you came to Nepal with all this luggage. And the photographer was like, oh honey, we're shooting you for the cover. So I didn't know. And then, I mean, she was just lovely, but from New York City, she was wearing white pants and white shoes, and we were climbing through the rice paddies. She scanned out this particular spot for that photo for about 6 hours the day before. So, and she shot the whole thing on film. So this was the last picture of the day of like a 12-hour photo shoot. So amazing for her. So this is me in my babysitting and Mendham High School days. Very, very sort of spur of the moment and last minute decision. My college applications were actually in. I was that typical kid that was headed on the road to college, and I loved school. I worked really hard. I loved my teachers. I loved playing sports, and I loved really everything about it. I always thought, I mean, they kind of train you here in Mendham from the very, very early days that you're doing this so that you can go to college and you can be successful. And it's definitely a pressure cooker here in this community that we live in. And I put a lot of that pressure on myself. My family was very much like took a laid-back approach, and I was that kid that was always like working harder, trying to strive to do more, and playing lacrosse. I was the editor-in-chief of my yearbook, and my yearbook advisor and English teacher's here tonight. And at the very, very last moment, I was getting ready to take my IB test, and I woke up and walked down the stairs, and my parents were sitting having their morning tea or coffee and reading the paper. And I said to both of them, like, I don't think I want to go to college. And they were so surprised, because everything the year leading up to that, the SAT prep courses and the late nights, all-nighters. Why was I pulling all-nighters in high school? I don't know. But they were just like, okay, if you don't want to go to college, let's look at some other options. And I had a lot of support through school, and I finally made a decision to take a gap year, which was kind of radical at the time. It's becoming more and more common, but it was scary for me looking back at that time. I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm really doing this. And all of my friends were talking about where they were going to school, and they were packing up their dorm rooms and getting ready to leave, and I just was allowed to bring that one little backpack with my very, very bare essentials. And it was just crazy and fun and an adventure. And the first program that I ever did was called BlinkNow. It's actually been bought over by a bigger company, Lifelong Educational Alternatives and Programs. And it was amazing. I met up with 12 other kids from all over the US. Actually, all of them went on to go to college. It was an interim college program. And we started out in the South Pacific Islands, and we were rebuilding seawalls after the tsunami hit. We were studying Buddhism with Buddhist monks on a Buddhist monastery. We were organic farming. We were scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef, and it was just such a cool experience. And the coolest thing about it was that I had kind of lost that passion for learning a little bit, just in the classroom and with all that pressure. And after I stepped out and really saw the world in that bigger picture, I got it back, and I was reading for pleasure again, and I was loving learning, and it really opened my world up. But fast forward 6 months, and I ended up in northeastern India just by chance. I said I wanted to work with kids. I talked to the program coordinator, and they said, oh, we know someone who has a project for children in the Northeast. Why don't you go there? And I wanted to be in one spot because I had been traveling for that whole 6 months. So I ended up volunteering in a children's home, teaching and helping in a children's project in northeastern India. Now, this was in 2005, and I didn't know it at the time, but just northeast, the northeastern border of India, there was a really pretty violent civil war going on in a country called Nepal. And again, I had a really great education at Mendham, but I had no idea what Nepal was, that it was a country, where it was. I knew a little bit about Mount Everest, but that was it. But as I was working in this project and training there, I started meeting the kids coming in across the border. And they were all Nepali, and they were living in refugee communities. And I wanted to know, why are they coming like this, and why are they living in these conditions? And if they're living so desperately and barely trying to survive, then what are they running away from? And I got to know the kids and packed up my backpack again, and I decided in 2006, as the border opened up, there was a UN armistice, and I decided to go with my young refugee friend, her name was Sunita, across the border and take a trip to Nepal. So I was a babysitter, and I was also an athlete. Like, I worked out all the time, but it was a 2-day bus ride and then a 3-day trek through the Himalayan mountains, and it was the hardest physical thing that I'd ever done in my entire life. But after 3 days, we got to this beautiful, beautiful village in the Himalayan mountains, and it was called Odanoku, and it was here that I started to really understand what that civil war had done to the people, and how it had affected the women and the children, and the goings on, and why people had to leave. And temples had been burnt down, and homes had been ransacked, and the schools were shut down. The tin roofs had all been blown away, so there was rain in the classrooms, and I was just like starting to really see it for the first time, see the raw effects of poverty and civil war and its effect on its people, and mainly the children. And at the same time, there was this contrast, because I really felt very much at home and at peace. And how can you not? I mean, it's this beautiful village in the middle of nowhere, and when people want the most basic things like salt and sugar and seeds to plant for their fields, they have to walk that same 3 days to get it. And they reside entirely subsistently and live off the land and carry water from the river. And there was something at the same time that was really beautiful about that. And they were very hopeful, and even though they had been through so much, they were just happy, and that kind of really got to me. But everybody always asks, like, yeah, you took this trip, but what was the moment that you really decided to do this and to make that move? And it really was a progression. It happened over time. This all happened over the span of a couple of years, but I remember this one moment where I was walking down the road back in a smaller city after a couple weeks of travel, and I crossed paths with this young girl, and she was carrying this load on her back that was about 160 pounds, and it was her job to go from the bus station to the shops throughout the city, and she would carry it back and forth and back and forth. And I looked at her, and it was a very spiritual sort of, I can say that because we're in a church and everything. And yeah, it was a very like spiritual moment where I just had this feeling like this child is me, and I could see exactly myself in this little girl. And it was like, whoa, we are the same kid, but we've been given these different lives. And it didn't make sense in my 18-year-old brain. I was just like, how does something like this happen? How is this her reality when I came from this different reality? And I went through the emotions of feeling really angry and really sad and really just like, how did I go my whole life without knowing that girls my age were fighting this fight and living this way? But it was also like, I realized that she is me, and she has all the potential in the world to make for this to change, and that I could help her. And so I also saw really immediately after meeting the women, and a lot of them, actually not a single one of them could read or write their own name, or none of them had been to school, and I could just see the link between education and poverty, and the cycles kind of perpetuating themselves. So I just had this thought as I was meeting a couple of these kids, and there was a dry riverbed that went through this one particular city, and all of the kids were breaking stones, and that's what they would do all day to make a living, and they would make $1 at the end of the day. And I had this thought of like, well, there's 1 million orphans in this country, and that number is really way too overwhelming for me, but maybe I could start with just one little kid, one girl, like the girl that we saw there. And the first little child who I put into school was a rock breaker, and her name was Hema. And just a few months later, I started talking to community leaders and politicians and policemen and school leaders and education people, and the enrollment fee to a local school was just $7. So the entrepreneur babysitter in me was like, okay, cool, I can do that. And in just a couple months, I had enrolled my first little girl into school. This is Hema, and her whole life kind of just transformed in an instant. And then I kept going from there. I enrolled a couple more kids and had a whole group of kids kind of going to school. But I also realized that there was a really big homelessness issue. So during the Civil War, a lot of kids had lost their parents, and they really had nowhere to go. So school was like way on the back burner. They were struggling with basic survival needs: food, clothing, a place to sleep at night. So I found this piece of property that was for sale. It was exactly $5,000, and I had saved exactly $5,000 from the time my parents opened me up a Commerce Bank account when I was 6 years old, lemonade stands, making friendship bracelets, and then I started as a mother's helper when I was 11, and then became a babysitter, and by the time I was a senior in high school, I had saved up $5,000. That was everything that I had to my name. So when I found out that this property in this beautiful little neighborhood was $5,000, I thought, that's a sign, I'm gonna buy it. And in the meantime, I registered a small NGO with the local Nepali government, and I had met these wonderful people, and I decided to create a small Nepali board, and everybody was really, really into it, and really fired up about getting their hands dirty. And I asked them all what their ideas were, and everybody said the same things. It was education and a place for children. So that was all we had, was this small piece of property and plans to build a home. And we had shovels, so we started digging the foundation, and then I ran out of money, so I came back home, back to Mendham. And honestly, people don't believe me when I tell them this, but in my head, I thought I could babysit my way into building this home. So I just came home and I lined up babysitting jobs with a couple families, and I just started babysitting morning till evening. It was the summer, so it was a great time to get jobs, and I was saving my money and wiring it over to build this home. And I got this far on my own. We built this small 4-bedroom house with a kitchen and a living room, and then I couldn't do it anymore. I needed the next order of cement to finish off the roof, and I didn't have it. So I was like, well, I'll have a garage sale, which are also really a great way to make money. So I collected all of my neighbors' junk and put up signs down Route 24. And I remember I needed exactly like $1,300 by the end of the weekend so that we could make that next purchase. And I live at the end of a cul-de-sac on North Linden, so we got a lot of great traffic. All the neighbors came, and at the end of the weekend, we had raised exactly $1,300. It was like $1,336, and I hit the target and sent the money back. And my neighbors across the street found out what was going on, and they called the local newspaper, and the local newspaper put this story on the front of Observer Tribune, and they told the story. And that was when I really learned the power of telling your story and really sharing. Even though it really didn't come naturally to me and I wasn't comfortable with it in the beginning. But that was when the Girl Scouts started getting involved, and all the families I was babysitting started getting involved. My schools that I went to, my middle school, my elementary, my high school, all of my friends and family. And in another couple months, we built this together. Thanks. And I came back and finished off the home, and I started taking in the kids that I wanted to take in. I think this was when we had just 15 or 16. And we called it Kopila Valley Children's Home. And Kopila, in the Nepali language, actually the local people chose the word. It means a bud. And they chose it because they were like, well, when we give children what they need, they're going to bloom. And we just loved the name Kopila. So now the kids, they call themselves the Kopila kids, and they're blooming, and it's Kopila Valley where children bloom, and it's been really, really fun. So I became a mom very, very quickly, and I started taking in one child after another child after another child. We had to go through a very extensive legal process, obviously, to go through custody. And my board and the whole local community really helped me with choosing the kids that really needed it the most. We started with 5 and then slowly grew to 6 to 7. Currently, we have 47 children living in our home. So I'm always like, I know, I look good for a mom of 47. This was one of our first ever Christmas photos that I sent around. I think Mendham newspaper definitely picked it up. And I'll talk a little bit about the model of what I wanted to create and why. In my research and really studying poverty issues and children and the orphanage, orphan care system, what I realized was that this cycle, even in foster care in the US, kids are aged out of a system and they end up right exactly back where they started. And the reason for that is that they're not raised in a family environment, and there's no consistency, there's not a lot of just family stability. And they don't learn the skills that they need that we would provide our children or our families with to really go out and succeed in the world. So I was like, I want to do this totally different. I want to have a family. I want this place to be their home. I want them to be brothers and sisters. And I had this vision in my head of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to create it. And I wanted to create a model that would work, that I could really share with the world and say, like, no, there's a better way to do this. And in fact, if we're going to deal with a population of 60 million orphan children worldwide, it will affect all of us. I mean, the fact that these kids are being raised as, you know, soldiers or carrying guns, that's a global issue. I chose Nepal. It's 8,000 miles away. God only knows how I got there. But this, I could just see the connectedness on an economic level, on a political level, on an international level, and the consequence of not raising children with love and with family. And I really wanted to change that. So this is my little one. Her name's Maya. She's actually 8 now, going on 9. She's naughty. Don't let the pictures fool you. And what we do is we garden. The kids raise their own animals. That's a really important part of what we do. And they have a lot of responsibility in the home. They work with the aunties and uncles. I have a whole Nepali team now, and we run the home as a family together. And they just really love each other. It's really special.
Can you stand aside so
Yeah, sure. I should just keep moving back and forth. This is one of the little babies. I always tell this story because people love it, but he was abandoned at the local bus station. We took him in temporarily while we looked for placement. And we have this family meeting every single night. It's called Satsang, and we all sit around and we sing songs. And it's the only time that you can get 25, 30, or 47 children in a room, and it's family time. And so we had this baby living with us, and I asked all of the kids what they wanted to name him. And they were reading Harry Potter at the time. So they named him Harry Potter, and we called him Harry Potter. And he actually, if you look closely, he has a scar on his forehead. And I include my parents in every single presentation that I give because they said yes. And oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how many kids come up to me and they're like, my parents would never, ever, ever let me do that. And they had all kinds of people coming up to them telling them that they were crazy and what did they do so that their daughter would want to move so far away. And they just really instilled like a sense of adventure and a sense of, you know, you can do anything. And it has been really hard on them, me being away all the time and my sisters being away, but they've just done really well. And my kids call them grandmother and grandfather now, and they're just really, really my number one support network. So that's them. We started to really gain traction especially with young people in the young people crowd. So Cosmo Girl picked up the story first. Cosmo Girl magazine, we sent in like a really quick bio with a photo, and a couple months later they called me up and said, you're Cosmo Girl of the Year, you get $20,000 and a Maybelline makeover. And they were like, come on, we're gonna whisk you away to New York City, we're gonna give you a makeover, and that was just really interesting. I had lace in my hair, and I was at this really fancy salon in New York City, and the guy was French, and I didn't let him dye my hair blonde. I was like, I'm not going to take it that far. And then shortly after that, DoSomething.org heard about what we were doing, and we applied for a grant through DoSomething.org, an organization in New York City for young people under the age of 25, changing the world, and they gave us a grant for $100,000. To do with it what we needed and what we wanted. And at the time I was up to 30 kids in the home, and I was sponsoring children in the community through educational scholarships, and I wanted to get them all under one roof. So I took the $100,000, invested it, signed a 5-year lease, and I built Kopila Valley School. And it's been 5 years in the making now. I can't believe I'm even saying that. But so the point of the school was that a lot of the kids we didn't really need to take into the home. They were living with a grandmother or a single mom struggling with 6 kids, or an uncle or an aunt or somebody from the village that would be willing to house them if we could just relieve some of the extra burden of food and education and clothing. So that was the purpose of the school, to be a really safe educational community place for children in need. So we built Kopila Valley School 5 years ago, and I said in my head, like, I don't want to see a single child breaking stone ever again. I want to change that reality. And 5 years later, there's not a single child breaking stone in the whole city. And great. And we have 350 students enrolled at Kopila Valley School. 350 kids, yeah. And they're just amazing. They're smart, they're funny. They are speaking in English now, totally bilingual. And we are the #1 performing school in the entire region. So competing with government schools, better funded schools, Army schools, and it's been really, really great. We're very competitive. We try to be the best we can absolutely be, and I have a lot of support now, 28 local teachers, volunteers who come from all over the world to really help us bring it to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. A soccer team, an after-school program, a lunch program. We run a small clinic, and this year we actually even launched a women's center to help support local mothers and give them the economic skills they need to really better themselves. So we teach literacy classes, financial literacy, parenting, domestic violence, and human rights, and skills like sewing and seamstressing, so that even the local women can be supported. We graduated a couple weeks ago, 60 women from our program as well. And this is our latest Christmas picture from this year. That's the kids in their uniforms. And this is my whole entire school for Christmas annual day. We had everybody in a formation. So those are all the kids together. Let's see. What else do I want to say? I wanted this to be a conversation because I knew a lot of people had probably heard the whole story and, probably had questions or other things that they wanted to talk about. But I've learned a lot. I'm still really learning. And what we're working on right now is a new and permanent school, because when I signed that 5-year lease, I didn't realize that 5 years would go by so super fast. And so now we're actually moving to a new property. We're building a high school, which is crazy. And we have kids going into 10th grade this year. So we're nursery, kindergarten, and then 1 to 10, going from top to bottom. Our youngest is 3 and our oldest is 16. So we haven't gotten to the place where we're aging our children out, but we're almost at that place where we can really see. Also, with being able to share the story, I've gotten to talk on panels at the UN and at the World Bank, and really kind of talk about the model and how this grassroots approach to change and foreign aid and development is really what works, because it gets to the people who really, really need it at the base of community. And it's about building community, and it's about the people actually taking ownership of a project and them being the ones that come up with the programs and raise themselves out of a situation and recover. So we've kind of been able to share this model to bigger organizations and say, like, go back to the basics, go back to education, go back to one child at a time, and that's where you're going to find success. Because the reason why, we have been so successful is because it's been slow and organic, and we didn't have big dollars from the very beginning. We went in with what we had and made a difference very, very little by little, and grew very organically and really slowly. And I think that that's been a huge part of the reason that, and I think we got lucky with really amazing, beautiful kids too. So that's really what I've learned. We are now a small team. We have our own office space in Morristown. I have a left hand, I call her Ruth, who's our director of operations, who's really came on as our first employee to help take everything to the next level and make sure that when I'm in Nepal, things are running smoothly and really going the way that they need to. And we have a great team of interns and volunteers here tonight. Nate, actually one of the kids who I babysat for, came and volunteered with me this year after he graduated from Mendham. And I think we've had 8 to 10 Mendham grads that have come out to be part of our team raising my children side by side. So it really has become very much a community effort. And still, it's only the beginning. I'm dreaming bigger and bigger. 350 kids is not enough. I want to keep going. We had 1,500 applicants every single year, an average of about 1,500 kids who come in without parents or without the support or ability to go to school. And just each year we're about to choose 30 to 50 kids. That's all we're able to choose. So with the new campus, we're hoping to be able to expand, take in more kids, enroll children into school, and then they really do the rest, which is the coolest thing. Like, we invest a little bit in them, and then they take it from there and become these amazing change makers. So that's our goal. This year, actually, one of my kids came and went to school here for a few months, so that was really cool. My oldest, Nisha, came, and she had this really cool experience where she came here and learned at Peck School in Morristown, and that was amazing because I got to see the reverse of, you know, myself going to Nepal, but now one of my kids is coming here to New Jersey. It was just so surreal taking her to the library and to my school that I went to, and it was just really, really amazing and incredible. And at this point, I guess I'll open it up to questions. I know I probably forgot things that people may want to know about or I can talk about. Sure.
Vaccinations of the children at certain ages.
Yes, so we do a vaccination program. We run a very small, it's called the Kopila Clinic. I have a nurse and a clinic technician there. And a lot of times we're able to partner with Rotary International on things like hepatitis, vaccines, or polio, and we can serve as a administering site so that all of the kids from the village and the surrounding city are able to come and get a vaccination there. And that's a lot of what our clinic does, is outreach. So we'll do dental checks, eye checks, a lot of deparasiting and deworming. Actually, the #1 killer of children in Nepal is diarrhea from drinking dirty water. So we're trying to do a lot of clean water awareness and initiatives and really keep the kids as healthy as possible. Nourishment's so huge. We serve 400 school lunches a day, and a lot of times it's the kids' big meal of the day. They eat these heaping huge piles of rice and vegetables and beans. That's the main staple, and we just feed them. And actually it boosts our attendance and it boosts their nutrition. They gain weight. They're not begging on the streets because they're really just begging for food, and then they get themselves back because a lot of it's just food. It's a food deficit region because of the Himalayan mountains, actually. So yeah, we're doing a lot of health stuff. What happened was, when I started the home, then I realized, oh gosh, they need a really good place to go to school. I have to homeschool them. And then it was like, well, if I'm homeschooling this many, why don't I open it up to this many? And then in order for the school to work, they had to be healthy and be able to come to school, so we did the clinic. And then their home lives were really bad, so we opened the Women's Center to improve, you know, the women. So it's been very like piecemeal, kind of doing one thing at a time. Interesting, because a lot of the pharmaceutical companies are right there in India, so we're able to get things for very, very cheap without dealing with a lot of the pharmaceutical, you know, price increases, not to get political on pharmaceuticals or anything. But like, it's a lot more cost effective. I mean, I think we do medical care for our kids, a full checkup for $25 with, you know, deparasiting, dental check, eye vision screening, weight. I mean, so that's one really good part about working in the developing world. Yes.
Does the government of Nepal give you any support? One question, and the second is, how large is your staff?
Great question. The government of Nepal, not a whole lot of financial support, no. Actually, we are the world's youngest republic, and we're still in the midst of putting a government together. And right now, the government's focused on writing a constitution, and it's pretty tumultuous politically still. Things are changing a lot. So every 6 months, we've had a new prime minister. So with the local government, we do some partnerships and collaboration, but on a national level, we haven't been able to get to that place yet. And how many Nepali staff do I have? The answer is we have 50 Nepalese people working with us. So that ranges, we have a school counselor, we have an office manager, we have 28 teachers, we have aunties and uncles who help with the meal prep, we have people who from the community who sell milk and their vegetables to supply to the home. And now we have a whole construction crew helping us with the new campus as well. We have tutors. I mean, it's really grown a lot. We're actually one of the region's highest employers, which is a big part of what we do. So Surkhet, the city that I live in now, where the home and the school is actually the hub center for 15 of the most remote Nepalese districts in Nepal. So the reason why I chose Surkhet was because, and I remember I showed you that picture that was way up 3 days walking. A lot of those kids that we take in come from those really remote areas, so we have access to them, but then we're in an area that's safe and rather developed with a bank and sometimes electricity. And so that's why I chose that particular area, and I don't have plans to expand really far outside of that radius. I made a decision a couple years ago that there was so much need that I wanted to stay right there and make a long-term impact. And then the way that I want to expand is by really sharing with other people who want to do similar work and telling them everything that I did and what I learned, and not to make the same mistakes, and really hopefully pass it on to the next generation of people who want to get into this kind of work. Yeah.
For your aged out, what do you see for them?
My aged out students, well, so my perspective now is like, these are my kids. They're gonna be mine forever. Like, they'll always have a home base, just like your children would. So I want that to be their home, but they have big dreams. You know, a lot of them want to go on to colleges, a lot of them want to be engineers and teachers and scientists and doctors. A lot of them say, Mom, I want to do exactly what you did, which is really sweet. They can take over for me as I age, hopefully. I think, I mean, the future will tell, but I got really lucky with my oldest, the first kid I ever took in, Nisha, who is just here. She's just really a smart kid. I mean, she taught herself to read in her first year. She taught herself English in her second year, was reading the Harry Potter series in her third year, and is just a really smart kid that could go on that track to really going places. And then realistically, we have the kids or the girls or the boys at school that, you know, the best thing that they could do is maybe sell their vegetables in the market and, you know, farm and not get cheated and be able to start a small business for themselves and build a business. You know, the really cool thing about education, even though you can't always measure the outcomes, especially right now, but statistically speaking, a child is like 90% less likely to contract HIV after a full life of schooling. A girl marries 4 years later on average after a couple of years of elementary school, so marriage gets pushed back. The number of children goes down, and then they're able to educate those children, and that's kind of how the cycle of poverty really begins to end. So that's kind of why I chose education. Yes.
Remarkable accomplishments. You're terrific.
Thank you.
Speak about your personal sacrifice and disappointments in this 8 years.
Oh, there have been so many. And that's a great question, because it's really easy to talk about the easiness. But I've lost 5 children to disease. I have had a suicide. You know, kids get sick. And that's been the thing that's been the most challenging, is you get really, really attached to these kids, and there's fear of, you know, losing them, and that's happened to me. That's been really probably the hardest thing for me to get over, because you love them so much. And then there's definitely been some disappointment with with just wanting everybody to get it. And you come from this one reality where kids are starving and would do anything for food and do anything to go to school, and then you have people that just complain or aren't living their lives to the fullest and don't get it, and you just want everybody to get it because you're coming from this extreme reality, and it's hard. It was hard in the beginning to get everybody to relate to what I was going through. And I've just learned how to express it and tell people in a way. And I never wanted to make people feel guilty either. I think we deserve to feel safe and free and have enough food to eat, and that's our human right. And I just want everybody to have it, you know what I mean? So that's definitely been something hard that I've had to learn to navigate. Going from Mendham to remote Nepal, it's enough my head sometimes, I'm just landing there in an airplane or traveling on a bus, you're just how does this even make sense in the world? How could this be the same place and the same planet? So sometimes just psychologically it's hard. And then the third is just missing my friends for sure, and missing the comforts of home. And now my friends are getting married and having kids, and wanting to go back and forth, and missing my sisters. So I would say there's definitely hard moments still. I just had a really hard month actually in Nepal, so it's up and down. Kids again.
How do you know what day it would be? How do you know if it's Monday or
in Nepal right now, it's the year 2071, and it's a totally different calendar. They go on the lunar calendar, so a lot of times I have no idea what day it is. And what's today? It's the 10th?
Yeah.
So right now in Nepal, it's the 30th of the second month of the year of 2071. So that's another thing that's different about going from one place to another. A lot of times you don't know what day it is. And then right now it's morning in Nepal. So when I come back, I have to switch to my whole time schedule. So you're right, it's really hard to know Monday, Tuesday.
I just wondered, this sounds just very silly, but I just wondered, what does Nepalese sound like? If you said, hello, I'm glad to be here, just what, could you just speak a sentence or two?
Sure.
It just sounds silly. Just what does that look like?
Namaste, तपाईहरुलाई कस्तो हुनुहुन्छ? म धेरै खुसी छु तपाईहरु आउनुभयो, मेरो कुरा मेरो भनाइ सुन्नुभयो. म धेरै खुसी छु.
That makes me very happy.
Thanks. I took Spanish for all of high school. Wasn't very good. And then I immersed myself in the language, and I learned it really, really quick because I had to. We speak Nepali and English in the home, but mostly Nepali is the language. So I had to learn it really quick, and I was able to. So
it's very pretty. It almost sounds like Italian to me.
Really? I speak an American accent. Yes.
wish list? What do you need?
Well, so great question. Thank you for asking it. We have a wish list and a fundraising movement going on our website, BlinkNow.org. And a lot of what we're doing right now is twofold. We're raising money for the new campus, which I'm actually going to show you in a little bit. This new school that we're building, which you're not even going to believe the scale that it's taken. And on an everyday basis, it's operations. Food is a huge, huge portion of our budget, and then really paying our nurse and a visiting doctor and teachers' salaries and maintenance and medicine that we need. It's really just the basic things. Backpacks, new school uniforms, keeping the school up and running. It's grown to a very large scale, and it is difficult to maintain, and that's a lot of what I'm doing now. We've dug 3 wells. So far, we brought in rigs all the way from India, and we have dug 3 successful wells. We also have done a lot of just water awareness, like in our Women's Center, how to boil water, how to filter water. We've given out, I think, 120 water filters, the simple Sawyer filters, and a lot of it comes down to really simple sanitation, like people don't have toilets. That's a huge problem. And like washing hands with soap, people can't afford soap. There's no toilet paper in Nepal. That's another really interesting thing. So a lot of it, just food, how we cook and prepare food is really big. But we have a Facebook page, an Instagram account, we're on Twitter, and we just recently actually launched a new website. So I still blog and journal regularly. I'm writing a lot. I'm trying to share as much as I can, and definitely learn more. If you want to get involved in a project with us or help us fundraise, we love it, and we're just always so touched by what people do. Running triathlons and running races and shaving beards, and we had a kid that fundraised for a school bus, a 25-year-old kid. He bought us a school bus. You know, we've had little girls that have been, given a 10-year scholarship to a little girl in Nepal, and a little bit really does go a very, very long way. So that's kind of what we try to tell people. I'm going to see if I can show you the new campus. Nobody has really seen it yet, but it's going to be, we're building it out of something called rammed earth. So we're taking the soil and the earth from the actual surrounding area, and it's similar to what the pyramids in Egypt were made out of. So it's carbon free. We're trying to have it be the greenest school in Nepal. And we're designing it to look like a little Nepali village and a community center based around a Nepali village. So that's been taking up almost all of my time. There's going to be a health center, there's going to be a vocational center, there's going to be a daycare for little ones, a primary school, a middle school, a soccer field. The kids are like so good at soccer, I pass that on to them, and a high school with outdoor spaces. So we're growing a lot of our own food on site. It's going to be a whole sustainable, like, eco-village, bioarchitecture, the whole thing. We have a great team that we're working with. Yes.
After you're finished with your high school and stuff, are you going to try to build a college?
Oh gosh. I don't know. And it's interesting because I always promised my mom that I would go back to college, and I haven't gotten to that yet either.
Build yourself one.
Yeah, and then go while I'll be in college with my children at the same time. But no, actually what's really exciting is my region are building a university right now with the World Bank. So by the time the kids are ready to graduate, they're going to have a university to go to become pilots and everything that they want to be.
And also, I'm starting to raise money for your foundation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. No, I can't even tell you like how much kids have done for me. Like, I have to be over there in Nepal a lot of the time, and kids have given up birthdays and sold little, what are the rainbow loom bracelets that are so in fashion right now, and cupcakes, and like, it's what enables me to do the work. So it really, really does make a difference. That's the hardest thing for me to get across to everybody, is that every single dollar makes a difference. Yeah.
What was Nisha's take on Mendham, New Jersey?
She loved it here. She really did. She was here. The thing that she complained about the most was the weather. Actually,
What time of year?
the snowpocalypse. She was here the whole time. She landed in November and left at the like last week of February. So she was here. She was like, I haven't seen a blue sky. Where's the blue sky? And I had two kids here. I had one of our students from school who actually, her name is Kavita. She was in 5th grade. She went to school in New Providence at a school there, and she needed an operation. And we partnered with Healing the Children New Jersey, and they did a huge life-changing operation for her. So they were both here during the snowstorm. But it was good because they had each other and could talk occasionally. And people were so nice to them. They were like little celebrities. They said their favorite food was Dunkin' Donuts. And
Please
they,
build a Dunkin' Donuts.
I was like, come on, really, Dunkin'? And people were so kind, and they've learned a lot. I mean, their English they picked up English right away. Nisha was playing on the volleyball team. They just immersed themselves. I was worried about the transition coming and then going back, and she navigated it so beautifully. I mean, she had things to say, definitely. Really interesting observations. She was like, kids, it's so good that they're really independent and loud and they say what they want and they're confident and girls are equal to boys here. But Mom, they just don't understand responsibility. Like, they just don't get it. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And that they really didn't know how lucky they were. Like how teenagers and mother-daughters have a dynamic where they like kind of bicker and back and forth. That was interesting to her. The TV and screens was interesting. She had a lot of really cool stuff to say. She wanted spicier food. It was amazing to watch, though. So for the corporal punishment, thanks for bringing that up. We were the first school to outlaw corporal punishment in the community. Yeah. And when we did that, when we took the stick, because this is like 100 years back in time, Nepal. And when we took the stick out of the classroom, people said that's not possible. Like in Nepal, kids are hit, and you don't know 2 + 2, and it's whack right across the face. And every teacher carries a stick. So when we started the school, we were like, nope, we're doing this differently. And I only hired young teachers who are willing to learn and willing to adapt and willing to do something. We're willing to do something different. And now we just hosted our first training with I have a fellow who's a licensed clinical social worker. She hosted a training. We had 28 other local schools who came to the training and signed a pledge for removing corporal punishment from the classroom. And but it took us 5 years and people seeing like, oh wow, these orphans are doing so well, like what are they doing differently? And that was how we slowly were able to raise the bar for education. And we're hoping to make that a national policy within the new Constitution. And I have to talk to the education minister about that, and I've been in conversations over tea with them for sure. And then crowdfunding is definitely where we've seen a lot of progress. The school bus, that's exactly what happened. He created an online campaign. There were a few thousand donors from all over the US. Everybody pitched in, and in 3 or 4 months for Matt's 25th birthday on December 25th, he not only raised $25,000 for a school bus, he surpassed his goal, raised $43,000, and created a bus fund so we could hire a bus driver, have diesel, have money for bus repairs, and he blew us out of the water. And it went like wildfire on the internet. So on our new site, you can actually create your own campaign and crowdfund for your cause. And that was what we have been working on for the last couple of months, is getting that new site up and running and going digital, because we do have such a small, mostly all volunteer team here in New Jersey. Well, I've always loved kids, always. And I've always just loved children. And I think it's so simple that we just need to take care of our children. What if world peace could come from just taking care of our little kids? And it seems so simple. People are talking about foreign aid and development and where our dollars are going, and it's just like, let's just take care of our kids and love them, and then they're gonna do everything else. Like, let's go back to the basics here. But in terms of my upbringing, I was always a little bit sensitive. My earliest memory is one of my neighbors stomping on an anthill, and all the ants like trying to leave the anthill and escape, and he was stomping it, and I started crying, and I was like, stop stamping on the ants. Like, I always had a little bit of an extra sensitivity to like living creatures, and my parents, to their credit, were very, very loving and very open, and lots of good family around. Well, I have to say that came from the education system that I was given. 100%. 100%. And two of my teachers are in the audience. I just want to clap for them. Two of my English teachers. And I mean, I would say the best thing that was given to me was an ability through this system of public school education, was the ability to ask questions, stand up for myself, make an argument for myself. I was instilled that by my teachers, by sports coaches, for sure, like get out there and fight. Girls and women on the rest of the country and across the world are not given those kinds of things where you're asked to like take a debate in a class and head up with a male and your student, a male student. And then I learned how to write, like, and how to express myself. And the first 4 or 5 years when I was starting the organization, that was all I had, was the ability to write and kind of share my ideas on a blog. And hopefully in the next couple of years, I don't know, when I take the time. But yeah, I think I'm a product of this community, 110%. And that was the first thing that I realized when I was going through the guilt and like seeing the poverty, was that, well, because I've been given this, now I have the power to really do something. And that's kind of my message to young people right now. It's like, we're given all of these things, equality, rights, the fact that we don't have to get married when we're 13, because we have to do that for the rest. We have to give what we have to the rest of the world and other boys and girls. So I learned to really harness what I've been given and then give it back. I think that's what I'm trying to spread.
The emphasis on women, like the Women's Center that you founded, is going back, are UN women involved at all? And is it all about female empowerment?
Totally. Entirely mothers, big sisters, caregivers, and it's about empowering them so that they can do it themselves, for sure. And we're looking at a lot of different models and sharing and making it happen. Thanks. I'll stay after and talk to anybody, and kids, you can come talk to me and follow along online. Just my team from BlinkNow, if they could just stand up too. Are they still here?
They're still here. Ruth
is here. Zoe Gaffney. And Nate, my volunteer fellow for the year. I couldn't do it without all of them and all of you guys, so I just wanted to recognize all of them.
So thank you all very much for coming. Thank you, Maggie. You're awesome, always.
Thank you.
You're the best.
Thank you.